Welcome back, everybody, to Business Talk, the show where we dive deep into the industries that keep our world moving. I'm your host, DDA, and in today's episode, I'm so delighted to introduce Stacy Luna. She's a mortgage banker, CMA, with Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. How you doing, Stacy?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, DDA?
Doing awesome. Thanks for asking as well. So, listeners, in each episode, our guests share practical tips and valuable advice that can help you navigate life and stay ahead in your own journey as you move forward. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Stick around because Stacy's going to actually share a story of someone that she has impacted with her services, and it's going to be great to be able to learn about that as well. Also, listeners, we're going to talk about mortgage basics. What is a mortgage, loan types, and choosing the right one? How do you know if you're going to choose the right one or not? The approval process, some mistakes to avoid and myths to bust, as well as refinancing and strategic advice. So with that being said, it's a mouthful, right, Stacy?
All in 5 minutes.
All in 5 minutes, 5 to 10, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and if you don't mind sharing with our listeners, Stacy, a little bit about your background.
Ooh, okay, just a little bit. So
yeah, just a little bit.
I have been in lending as a mortgage broker, banker, bank representative since 1997. I've seen the ups and the downs since I was here in 2008. I was here over the last 5 years. And I came into this industry from the real estate side. So I understood that side first. And, I do say, though, that I was literally born to do this job. And I say that because I garnered lessons both from my father and my mother. My mother was an accountant. By the way, accounting is nothing like mortgage lending. If you're looking at those two options for a career, they're totally different. But I understood numbers very easily, simple numbers, multiplication, percentages, division.
Absolutely.
And then my father taught me sales, whether he knew it or not. But I worked in his store and learned how to help people make great decisions.
I love that. When we look at the mortgage industry and we're looking at what's going on today in the market, some of our listeners are not familiar with the difference between a mortgage banker or other types of lenders. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question. And it's one that frequently gets confused amongst clients and also partners. So I have been all of these types of industries as in regard to mortgage lending. So you have a bank, right? Just like your bank where you do your checking and everything with. That's frequently thought of. Now, a bank does everything. They do auto loans, they do checking accounts, they do IRA, they do all kinds of stuff, right? Then you have mortgage brokers, which are kind of like an insurance broker. So you would talk to them, and I was a broker for 16 years of my career. Mm-hmm. And basically we have options, a list of maybe 50 different companies that we can go to with their particular file. The reality, though, is that brokers typically have their favorite 5, right? They have the top ones that really encompass most people, and that's typically who they're going to use. They're the best pricing. They're, have all the best features. Then we have mortgage bankers, which I work. Atlantic Bay is an independent mortgage bank. That means we're kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion, which why wouldn't it be? Why would I be here if it wasn't? But if you consider it, we're very much like a bank in that it's our money we're lending. Okay. Mm-hmm. The bank, however, again, they do other things. So they have a very small box you have to fit into. All we do are mortgages. So that's all we focus on. But we're like a broker in that we offer what I call the vanilla stuff, FHA, conventional, VA, USDA, but then we also are able to broker other loans out. Okay. So if we have somebody who needs a bank statement loan because they're self-employed, we have that option as well. So we're kind of a hybrid of a broker and a banker. And I believe the reason why I came to Atlantic Bay almost 9 years ago was to deliver a 5-star client experience. And that is something, in my professional opinion, is hard to do as a broker, because you lose control of the file when you have to send it out to somebody else.
Interesting. It's very well stated. I couldn't have said it best myself. Let's talk about the current market trends that we're experiencing right now in this economy. Any thoughts?
So I've been I feel like preaching from, to a lot of people about is truly, I know a lot of people are sitting on the fence, and there is some concern about where the economy is going, and is it now the time to buy? And then there's also people sitting in their homes at really low interest rates. And I call them kind of the golden handcuffs, because you literally don't want to leave your 3% interest rate to go into something that's starts with a 6, right?
Right.
However, for those people that do not own a home, not at all, I believe sitting and waiting and not buying now is a mistake, personally.
Okay.
Unless you're in a situation where you don't know if you want to stay in that area. But if you really want to buy, you've been wanting to buy for a couple of years, and you just keep waiting and waiting for the right time, you're never going to be able to time the market perfectly. Okay. However, I can tell you this right now, the average person buying their first home, it takes them about 7 years to save up the down payment to buy that first home. Okay. Based upon the current values of homes. In addition, home prices in Florida over the last 5 years, the value of the homes have gone up about 65%.
I agree with that.
If we wait to buy when the rates come down, the problem is that the home values are going to continue to rise, and we have missed out on all this time that we could have been building equity.
I like what you said, that there's never a right time.
No.
Right, for anything, whether it's real estate, whether it's starting your own business.
Yeah.
There's just you just got to jump in. Exactly, that as well. So there's never that perfect time. So I like what you said. Great answer on that. Loan types and choosing the right one. But there's so many different types of loans out there. How in an overview of common mortgage loan types, when you talked about FHA, when you talked about conventional and VA, adjustable rates and fixed, can you expand on how does a customer know what is the right loan type for them?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm going to give you
sure. I know there's so much.
A generic answer, though,
Yes.
Because the reality is that you have to trust your lender, because you aren't going to know. I mean, it's you can do all the research you want on Google, but the reality is that you don't know how to structure a loan as a consumer, right? And so I just had a conversation with a client yesterday, and I said, listen, you're going to qualify for probably 3 to 4 different types of loans. My job, that's what I get paid to do, is to look at all those options through my eyes and say, okay, what are the 2 best ones for you? And then kind of go over those with you in depth and let you choose. I mean, again, I said it earlier that my job is really to help them make good decisions. And that's because this is what I do. This is what I know. This is all I do. Right. And, right now, government loans are priced a little bit lower than conventional loans typically. And so sometimes that makes more sense if you're not putting a lot of money down, right? Because almost everybody anyway, who's getting a mortgage today and who has gotten a mortgage in the last 2 or 2.5 years, they're anticipating that they're going to refinance, hopefully at some point when the rates come down, right?
Right.
Everybody's still, and I do try to break this easy to people, but if you're waiting for 2 or 3%, again, even 4%, I think you're looking for unicorns and rainbows, or definitely unicorns. Rainbows actually exist.
Right.
So maybe 5% is the rainbow, right? But quite frankly, rates today are not really high. When I got in the business back in the 90s, and even people who bought earlier in the 80s and before that, my rates were between 8.5% and 9%. Okay.
Right.
Prior to that, they were in the teens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't foresee that we're going back there, right? However, I don't see we're going back to when COVID was happening and we were artificially kept low to maintain some monetary balance in the market and helping people, with something. So this is where I think that people need to really trust their lender. Working with a lender that doesn't have a lot of experience is not a great idea. And I say that because I was that lender at one time, and you don't know what you don't know, right? And, and unfortunately, just like everything else in life, sometimes you learn really strong lessons by making mistakes.
No, I agree with that 100%. And that was actually well said as well. Boy, you're batting 10 out of 10. This is awesome.
Thanks.
I love it. So, when we talk about the approval process, we talk about credit factors. How important is credit in the overall scheme of things when applying for a mortgage?
That is a question. I talk to people all the time and they're like, well, I'm waiting to get my credit score up. I'm like, what's your credit score? And they're like, oh, it's like a 680 or a 710 or whatever. And I'm just like, you know what? I said, your credit is definitely good enough to get a mortgage. Your credit score is a huge variable in what your interest rate's going to be and what your terms can be, what programs you're going to qualify for. However, it's not the only factor. And it is also helpful to work with a lender that knows how to help you slightly improve your score. So let's say you have you've got a 690 score and you're trying to qualify for a conventional product, to get a certain rate or whatever the situation might be. We can look at that. We have an analyzer in our system and we can say, okay, if you do 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to cost you maybe $1,000, or if it costs you anything, sometimes it doesn't cost anything. Sometimes it's just removing you as an authorized user on an account, right?
Right.
So if we can show you how to do those things, literally, I have a client right now who, by removing her as an authorized user on an account, her score will go up 80 points.
Wow.
80. Like it's
that huge.
It is huge. And, the credit scoring thing is a game. It's really a game. The other thing I tell people all the time is, listen, if you know when your payment is due, and you also know when that creditor reports to the credit bureau, you can kind of hack the system to get a higher score just by paying it down to 10% or less if you can, or 30% at the highest if you can. If you can pay it down to that point prior to them submitting it to the credit bureaus each month, that's going to give you the highest score.
Interesting.
So those little things can make a big difference in your score. And that credit report, we keep that credit report live for 4 months. So it stays good once we pull the hard pull for 4 months.
Very good. And, there are some mistakes to avoid, what are maybe 1 or 2 things to avoid during that process of trying to get a loan or getting that loan approved? And there's certain things that you got to not do during that process before closing, right?
Well, so the I don't want to call it a joke because it's really happened to all of us who've been lending for a long time, but there's always somebody that goes and buys a car or goes and spends a bunch of money on something and they have their credit pulled, which the credit pull doesn't always necessarily negate the situation. But if they've taken on additional debt now, like a car payment, and today's car payments are no joke, right?
Well, even furniture too, right?
Mm-hmm. Furniture, again, it can and can't. It just kind of depends on what the minimum payment is.
Right.
We don't look at how much debt you owe. We look at what your payments are.
Makes sense. Okay. So the car would be a big one.
The car would be huge. And I'm seeing car payments today, $800, $900, like almost, I don't want to say common, but it's getting more and more common to see that.
Right.
But definitely 500 to 600. Whereas if I go back, 10 or 15 years ago, most car payments were under $300 or $400, right? So they're pretty significant, and that $300 or even could move somebody's debt to income ratio to where they no longer qualify, and it's really hard to take back a car.
No, that's that's very, very true. As we wrap up, I was kind of sharing at the beginning of the episode. Is there a story or a customer that kind of stands out? I know you got a lot of them. Don't mention any names, of course,
No, of
but
course.
a story that really resonated with you, that they were happy, and I'm sure all your clients are. Something that stands out that you'd like to share, very brief.
I would say that I have a family that moved here from Pennsylvania. I feel like it was 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be 3 years this December. And it was a husband, a wife, and 2 children and 2 dogs. And he was in the manufacturing industry. So he worked in a warehouse up north in Pennsylvania, which is, I feel like it's more common up north. But they have come to Disney, they come to the beach, they love the beach. And he had just decided, and I didn't really, at the time, I didn't understand where his motivation was coming from. But he had decided he was going to move his family to Florida, that they were so in love with this area and they really wanted to live here. Well, he was introduced to me around December 3rd or December 4th. And he was starting his job like the very next week, and he needed to move down here. And he moved his family into a 1-bedroom, like a suite hotel.
Right.
Imagine this sweet wife. She's in this hotel room with 2 dogs, 2 kids. She's homeschooling them now because he's working and they're living out of state. So she's trying to finish them up for the school year, or for that part of the school year. And the realtor needed to find him, and I qualified him for a home that was around $250,000. This is only a couple of years ago. That's not an easy thing to do in Central Florida, even
right. Absolutely.
But he had all the faith that it was going to happen. He got the job. He started working. And I said to my team, now, mind you, they still hadn't found the house yet, and we needed to get them qualified and closed on the loan. And I basically said, look, this is our Christmas miracle. This is going to be our Christmas miracle, family. I know we can do it. He's got the job. So, as long as they can find him a home and everything goes perfectly, we can get them in before Christmas. Not to mention that the son's birthday, he was a Christmas baby.
Oh,
and I wanted them to be in a home for Christmas, not in a hotel room. Right.
Right.
So it all happened. We were able to do that. And, they were just super grateful. It was just one of the most special, like it felt like a Christmas miracle to me. And it was just a great moment. And they were very appreciative, obviously, and super excited. And, recently I saw on their social media, that he has bone cancer.
Oh.
And, so there was a GoFundMe, and I reached out to him. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, come to find out, and this man is not very old. He's in his 30s. This was his second time with this. The first time was before I knew him. And when you meet people, you sometimes wonder, like, wow, I've never seen somebody that is has that kind of drive, that I'm making this happen for my family.
Absolutely.
But once I realized what he had already gone through,
right,
I got it. I was like, nobody was going to tell him he wasn't going to have this for his family, because he has realized that life is way shorter than most of us do at a very early age.
Wow, Stacy, I love that story, and I can tell how passionate you are about telling that story, because it's there. That is a great story, and thank you for sharing this with our listeners as well. As we wrap up, could you provide our listeners with your phone number and a website to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My phone number is area code 407-832-3729. And my website is www.stacyluna, there's no E in Stacy, just STACYLUNA.com.
Well, listeners, thank you so much, for, taking the time to listen to this podcast. And if you do like this content, please feel free to share, subscribe, as well as, mention something in the comments as well. Stacy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be able to, talk about your profession and your services that you offer. And hopefully we can have you back on in the near future.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you asking.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to First Media Consulting Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe today. To nominate a business you would like to recommend to be on our show, go to firstmediaconsulting.com or call. Thank you for listening.